In 1973, the United States and the Soviet Union came within hours of direct military confrontation, not in Europe, not over Berlin, but over a narrow body of water in the Middle East. During the Yom Kippur War, when the Soviet Union threatened to intervene to save a surrounded Egyptian army, the Nixon administration quietly raised the American nuclear alert level to DEFCON 3. The world didn't know. The crisis passed, but what made it so dangerous, what brought two nuclear superpowers to JPY edge was that neither side had a clear, agreed-upon set of rules for who controlled the water. Here's why I'm telling you this tonight. Because right now, in 2026, we are watching a version of that same dangerous ambiguity play out in real time in a body of water that carries roughly 20% of the world's traded oil, and the question of who controls it, who gets to make the rules, and what happens when those rules are violated has just become a great deal more urgent and a great deal more dangerous. Today, May 4th, 2026, Iran's state media and its Fars news agency reported that two missiles struck a United States Navy warship near Jask Island, a small, strategically critical piece of land sitting right at the eastern mouth of the Strait of Hormuz. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps claimed the ship had ignored their warnings. They claimed it was moving in violation of what Tehran now calls its maritime security regime, Iran's unilaterally declared set of rules for USA, who may or may not transit one of the most economically vital waterways on Earth. The United States government has denied it. Senior American officials have flatly said no vessel in the US fleet was struck by Iranian missiles. And that is on its own a remarkable and important fact. Two governments, two completely contradictory accounts, one very, very consequential stretch of ocean. To understand how we got here tonight, you need to back up just a few months. Since February 28th of this, the United States and Israel have been in an active state of war with Iran, a conflict that began staggeringly during what were supposed to be nuclear negotiations. The US and Israel conducted surprise airstrikes on Iranian military and government sites. Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, was killed. In response, Tehran launched hundreds of drones and ballistic missiles at Israel, at US military installations across the region, and critically, it closed the Strait of Hormuz. Not partially. Iran imposed a full maritime lockdown and declared itself the arbiter of who passes through. Hundreds of commercial ships carrying everything from crude oil to grain have been stranded, as many as 20,000 seafarers trapped at sea. The global economy has been feeling it every single day. Enter President Trump's response: Project Freedom. On Sunday, Trump announced a massive US naval operation, 15,000 service members, over 100 aircraft, deployed missile destroyers, warships, and drone assets, all tasked with escorting stranded commercial vessels safely out of the strait. Trump framed it on Truth Social as, quote, a humanitarian gesture. Iran's senior military commander Ali Abdullahi called it something entirely different. He said, and I want to be precise here, that any foreign armed forces, especially the aggressive US Army, would be attacked if they attempted to approach or enter the strait. Tehran called it a direct, the violation of the ceasefire. And then this morning, two missiles, or the claim of two missiles, and a warship that either was struck or was not, depending entirely on which government you ask. Here's the part that matters, and I want you to sit with this for a moment. We have now entered a phase of this conflict where the fundamental facts of a potential act of war are themselves contested. Not the interpretation of the facts themselves. Iran says American sailors may have been killed or wounded on a US Navy vessel today. The Pentagon says that didn't happen. And right now, somewhere in the Strait of Hormuz, the truth is sitting at the bottom of a very murky chain of command, and the rest of the world has to decide who to believe while the clock is ticking. This is not a small thing. In 1964, the Gulf of Tonkin incident, in which the US claimed American warships were attacked by North Vietnamese torpedo boats in contested waters, turned out to be, at minimum, far more ambiguous than the Johnson administration told Congress or the American public. That ambiguity became the legal and political foundation for the escalation of the Vietnam War. Decades later, the Secretary of Defense who helped build that case said privately that he was not sure the second attack ever happened. We are not saying tonight that history is repeating. What we are saying, what the facts demand that we say, is that the structure of this moment is familiar in ways that should make everyone pay very close attention. What is actually at stake here, stripped of the noise, is a question of maritime sovereignty, of who gets to control the choke points of global commerce in a time of war. Iran has asserted that the Strait of Hormuz now operates under its security regime. It has demanded that all vessels, including U.S. Navy ships, coordinate passage with the Iranian military. The United States has refused to accept that framing. Instead, Washington has deployed a carrier, JPG strike group, and a flotilla of destroyers, the Abraham Lincoln, the Gerald R. Ford, dozens of supporting vessels, specifically to assert the opposite, that the strait is international waters, that free passage is a right under international law, and that the United States will enforce that right by force if necessary. Those are two completely incompatible legal and strategic positions. And this morning, they may have physically collided. The question is whether what happened near Jask Island was a skirmish, a warning shot fired, and an incident that can be quietly walked back through back channels, or whether it was something that neither side can allow to go unanswered. Zoom out, and the picture is even larger. The Strait of Hormuz carries roughly 20% of the world's oil and a significant portion of global liquefied natural gas. Every day it remains closed or contested, energy markets shutter. Every day that commercial shipping cannot transit freely, supply chains that were already fragile from the pandemic, years get stretched thinner. The International Maritime Organization has confirmed that hundreds of vessels and tens of thousands of seafarers remain stranded. The ripple effects reach grocery stores and fuel pumps in countries that have no stake in this war, countries in South Asia, East Africa, Southern Europe, that are simply caught in the economic wake of a conflict they did not choose. And here is the other dimension that the mainstream conversation keeps underplaying. This is not simply a bilateral US to Iran confrontation. Saudi Arabia has called the security of Hormuz a collective priority. The UAE and Bahrain have been warned by the Houthi movement in Yemen, which remains aligned with Iran, that they will be, quote, the first to lose if they join the strait reopening effort. Turkey has had Iranian ballistic missiles enter its airspace. NATO has been drawn in as a question of collective defense. This conflict has already metastasized beyond its two original combatants, and every escalation, including today's risks, pulling another actor into a widening spiral. For ordinary Americans, for ordinary people, anywhere the immediate impact is energy prices, shipping costs, and the quiet economic anxiety that comes when the global system feels unstable. But the deeper impact is something harder to quantify. It is the erosion of the structures, the laws, the norms, the institutions that have governed international maritime commerce and conflict for decades. When a major power asserts the right to close an international strait and fire on the warships of a rival who challenges that closure, it is a clear example of a major power using its military force to enforce its will. And when those facts themselves become a theater of competing narratives, something important is being lost. The ability to share a common set of facts about what is happening in the world is not a small thing. It is in many ways the precondition for everything else, for diplomacy, for de-escalation, for peace. The United States government is correct. If no American ship was struck, then what exactly did Iran fire at and why? And if Iran's account is even partially accurate, what is the chain of command inside the Trump administration for deciding whether and how to respond? And has that chain been pressure tested for a moment this serious? And perhaps most urgently, in a conflict where both sides are already contesting the basic facts of what is happening, who is the responsible party for? Establishing truth, and who bears the consequences when no one can. The Strait of Hormuz is 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. 21 miles of water that the world's economy has to pass through. Tonight, that 21 miles is the most contested geography on Earth, a place where two governments are telling two irreconcilable stories about what happened this morning, and where the distance between those two stories is the distance between a manageable crisis and something far. Harder to walk back from. We will keep watching, we will keep asking, and we will be back tomorrow night.